Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Cynthia LaRive, I'm the Chancellor of UC Santa Cruz, and I am thrilled that so many folks are able to join us for this very special evening, both in person and around the world via live stream. Thank you, Mariachi Eterno, our student mariachi group, for opening the festivities with such beautiful music. Your talent and the joy you bring to your songs are uplifting. And thank you all in attendance for taking the time to join in this celebration, which we're calling Sharing Futures, Speaking Truths. It is a commemoration of the 30th anniversary of our Research Center for the Americas. Tonight, as you know, also involves a very special renaming of the center in honor of Dolores Huerta. And that renaming is made even more special in that Dolores has joined us this evening. The center's strong focus is on issues closely related with Huerta, and that makes this naming an ideal fit. The RCA's work is emblematic of our deep, campus-wide commitment to social and environmental justice. and our long history of cross-disciplinary work. Renaming the center in Huerta's honor enables us to recognize her incredible legacy and to reaffirm it at a time when the political tides seem to diminish leaders like her. I am certain that UC Santa Cruz students, the next generation of changemakers, will be inspired by Huerta for many years to come. So we have an exciting program planned for you, and I'm thrilled to get to kick things off. On behalf of the campus, I would like to officially welcome Dolores Huerta and keynote speaker Cristina Jiménez to UC Santa Cruz. I would also like to acknowledge a number of special guests. Camila Chavez and Lori De Leon of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. They are Dolores Huerta's daughters. Ambassador Alejandra Bologna Zubicare of Mexico. State Assembly Member Robert Rivas. State Senator John Laird. The Mayor of Santa Cruz, Sonia Bruner. Council Member Rebecca Garcia of Watsonville. And Council Member Anthony Rocha of Salinas. I would also like to acknowledge members of the university's leadership who are here this evening. Lori Kletzer, Campus Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor. Mark Delos Reyes Davis, Vice Chancellor of University Relations. Catherine Mitchell, Dean of Social Sciences. Lorena Piñalosa, Chief Campus Counsel. Adrian Brasanovo, Associate Campus Provost. We also have several college provosts who are here with us and a few members of the UC Santa Cruz Foundation Board of Trustees. Thank you all for being here and showing support for the work of the center. I'd now like to invite Dr. Rebecca Hernandez, the university's first ever community archivist, to share our land acknowledgement.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm the daughter of Alfonso, a Mexican-American union organizer, and Sarah, a Mescalero and Warm Springs Apache farm worker. Together, they provided me with the love necessary to navigate a complicated world, one that questions the value of people like me. Beautiful combinations of history and lifeways. Here at UCSC, recent comments were made that sought to divide us, our beloved Native and Latinx communities. Though it is a painful time for American Indians on campus, like our honored guests, we understand the strength of unity, dreaming, and the power of coalition. We will press on knowing we are stronger together. It is my privilege to share the land acknowledgement tonight. By doing so, we are reminded that the history of Indigenous people here did not begin with European contact. Long before that time, Native people cherished this land and are still intrinsically connected to it. The land acknowledged provides a moment for us to reflect on the beauty of the place we enjoy as guests and to appreciate all the Amamutsan Tribal Band did and continues to do to honor it. The land on which we gather tonight is the unceded territory of the Awaswa-speaking Yupi tribe. The Amamutsan Tribal Band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. I'm so happy to be here. I can't even tell you. It's like, wow, can you believe it? Woo! And before we begin, I also want to acknowledge Dr. Emilio Huerta, who is here and was at our house this evening, and is the son of Dolores. So, this is such an amazing milestone. Founded in 1992, the Research Center for the Americas, now the Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas, has spent decades deepening global understanding of the experiences of Latinx people in the United States and the social, political, economic, and environmental forces shaping Latin America. Both the center's research impact and its focus on student engagement and commitment and mentorship demonstrate a deep commitment to many of our values in the Division of Social Sciences, particularly inclusion, ensuring our diverse student population is increasingly able to recognize itself in our faculty, our staff, and our overall institutions. I am so proud of the center's work over the years. But of course, today, especially, I am proud of the renaming of the center in honor of someone incredibly special, the incomparable Dolores Huerta, whom we'll have the pleasure of hearing from a bit later this evening. For now, I am particularly delighted to welcome Dr. Silvana Falcón, the director of the Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas and associate professor of Latin American and Latino Studies at UC Santa Cruz. But first, we have a message from California Senator Alex Padilla.
Hi, I'm Senator Alex Padilla. Congratulations to UC Santa Cruz's Research Center for the Americas on your 30th anniversary. As the first research center in the UC system to bring together Chicano, Latino, and Latin American studies, I thank you for your commitment to academic excellence and cultural studies in California. And you've created a home for a new generation of students and scholars interested in tracing our roots, mentoring others, and celebrating the cultures of Latino communities. And it's only fitting that this trailblazing center will now be named in honor of the civil rights icon, Dolores Huerta. Dolores has been an inspiration to generations of Latino leaders, as well as activists, students, and academics. And now, just as you do so many to the cause of working people, the Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas will encourage future leaders to engage with the world around us, fight for social justice, and explore the cultures and history that make us who we are. Congratulations again to Dolores Huerta, to the Research Center for the Americas on 30 years, and to all of you who will bring scholarship to this center for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Padilla, and thank you also to your staff for coordinating the logistics of getting us that beautiful video. Buenas noches a todos. Qué honor estar aquí para celebrar a Dolores Huerta y escuchar a Cristina Jiménez. Una noche dos mujeres poderosas. I didn't expect that on that line. Good evening, everyone. What an honor to be here to celebrate Dolores Huerta and to hear from Cristina Jiménez. One night, two powerful women. I wish I could thank everyone who has made tonight possible, but for the sake of time, I want to acknowledge a handful of people, specifically Job Rubens, Kristen Palma, Diana Hogue, Allison Sorgel, Alisa Smith, Nick Gonzalez of University Relations, Dario Leon and Nancy Hernandez Rocha of the Research Center, John Radecki and Juan Perez of Information Technology Services, and Ursula Oberg of the Latin American and Latino Studies Department. Thank you. "30 years ago, the Research Center broke new ground by putting in conversation the historically disconnected fields of Chicano, Chicanx, and Latino, Latinx ethnic studies with Latin American area studies. This convergence meant that we could explore the shifting dynamics of race, ethnicity, and gender across the region. We could also learn from and about Latin American feminist movements to imagine new methods of organizing in the United States. And we could support research about migrants and workers' rights from a human rights perspective, one of human dignity. Our public programming reflects this same intellectual approach. The center also proudly mentors students at the undergraduate and graduate levels to prepare them for future success. Students gain research skills under the supervision of UCSC faculty. They can apply for funding to attend conferences or conduct research, and they find a community of support. We will continue doing what we do best as a research center, and with your continued support, be in a position to expand our capacity and to do this work now in the name of Dolores Huerta. When we asked some of our students what it meant to them to have a campus unit named after Dolores Huerta, we heard so many beautiful things, from feeling seen, to feeling represented, to feeling like they belong and are welcomed here, to even being inspired to, and I quote, "stand up for what I believe in." I've had the distinct honor of being the faculty director of the center since 2018. I want to acknowledge the previous directors of the center whose dedicated work have led us to this present moment. Professors Norma Glan, Pedro Castillo, Patricia Zavea, Olga Nájera Ramirez, Aida Hurtado, Gabriela Arredondo, and Catherine Ramirez. Thank you to our event co-sponsors, the Office of the Chancellor, the Division of Social Sciences, the Humanities Division, the Arts Division, the Institute for Social Transformation, the Humanities Institute, the Institute for the Arts and Sciences, John R. Lewis College, the Latin American and Latino Studies Department, the Peggy and Jack Baskin Foundation Presidential Chair in Feminist Studies, Bookshop Santa Cruz, and Pajarosa Floral. Thank you also to artist Francisco Letelier for granting us permission to use his beautiful artwork on our program cover, honoring, quote, "women throughout the Americas who create enduring cultural practices and sustainable relationships to the earth and within society." Students, you will get a chance to co-create a new mural on campus with Francisco next spring in recognition of this milestone anniversary. To rename a unit on campus is a considerable undertaking, and even though Dolores Huerta's name kept coming up as someone who inspired us at the Research Center, the timing just wasn't aligning. And then Peter Bratt, our very own Banana Slug alumnus, who sits on the Research Center's Distinguished Alumni Board and is here with his family this evening, directs a powerful and award-winning documentary titled Dolores. The stars were starting to align. With Peter's support, we confirmed Dolores' approval for embarking on a renaming effort about 10 months ago. The timing was finally right. Thank you, Peter. This undertaking has charted a new path for realizing renaming efforts at the university. Rather than being a top-down approach, we are from the grassroots up. By launching a successful crowdsourced campaign 30 days ago, we sent a public message that anyone could become a donor, anyone could show their support for honoring Dolores Huerta at the University of California, and that this naming belongs to the community. So thank you for supporting us, and we hope you continue to do so. Now it's my tremendous honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage the one, the only, Dolores Huerta. We're gonna sit at the chair first. Today is Dolores Huerta Day in the county of Santa Cruz. The county proclamation states, and I quote, "Now therefore I, Ryan Coonerty, 3rd District Supervisor of Santa Cruz County, join the Santa Cruz County community in honoring Dolores Huerta and thanking her for her courage, service, and leadership to improve the lives of farm workers and all working people, and do hereby proclaim October 20th, 2022 as Dolores Huerta Day in Santa Cruz County." Thank you, Supervisor Coonerty. I'm now going to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Gabriela Arredondo, Associate Professor of Latin American Latino Studies, and together we will proceed with the honoring of Dolores Huerta, founder and president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation.
Is it on? Okay. It's an honor to be here. Dolores Clara Fernandez was born on April 10th, 1930, in Dawson, a mining town in the mountains of New Mexico. Her father, Juan Fernandez, a farm worker and miner by trade, was a union activist who ran for political office and won a seat in the New Mexico legislature in 1938. Her mother, Alicia Chavez, was an independent businesswoman who owned and ran a 70-room hotel. Dolores spent most of her childhood and early adult life in Stockton, California, where she and her 2 brothers moved with their mother following their parents' divorce. In 1962, she and Cesar Chavez co-founded the United Farm Workers Union. She served as vice president and played a critical role in many of the union's accomplishments for 4 decades.
Early in her life, Dolores Huerta was an elementary school teacher who saw kids at school hungry. She saw their parents working in dangerous and unsafe conditions. Dolores Huerta felt she could do something about these injustices because she believed these parents deserved safe working conditions, to be free from harmful pesticides, and have the right to unemployment and health care benefits. And so began her life as an organizer and activist. She's also a former UC Regent appointed by the Governor of California and has earned honorary doctorates from universities throughout the United States. Tonight, here at UC Santa Cruz, we are happy to continue with the accolades. I'd like to invite Mayor Brunner to present the city proclamation in recognition of the 30th anniversary of the center and to present Dolores Huerta with the key to the city. So you and I stand here.
Thank you. My name is Sonia Brunner. I am the mayor of the city of Santa Cruz. I am absolutely honored to be here today, to be standing on this stage with Dolores Huerta, thank you so much to Silvana Falcon for inviting me here today to celebrate with you all. And what an amazing, amazing turnout. So many beautiful faces here. So without further ado, I would like to present a mayor's proclamation. I will add the Research Center for the Americas was founded in 1992, the same year I moved to Santa Cruz. Whereas the Research Center for the Americas at the University of California at Santa Cruz, UCSC, is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And whereas the Research Center for the Americas is the first research center in the University of California system to advance the interdisciplinary scholarship that brings together over 90 scholars in Latinx, Latin American human rights, and immigration studies. And whereas the Research Center for the Americas has built common ground for exchange between people, institutions, countries, cultures, as a way to understand and support resolving complex issues in Latin America, the United States, and the borderlands in between. And whereas the Research Center for the Americas has provided generations of students at UCSC with the opportunity to participate in its undergraduate research apprenticeship program. And whereas the Research Center for the Americas has provided students and faculty at UCSC with the opportunity to participate in research clusters and receive grants that advance cutting-edge research throughout the Americas. And whereas over the past 3 decades, the Research Center for the Americas has sponsored hundreds of public conferences, seminars, lectures, and events that have enabled residents of Santa Cruz to learn about and reflect on pressing issues of social justice, equity, and inclusion at the local, national, and transnational levels. So now, therefore, I, Sonia Brunner, Mayor, City of Santa Cruz, do hereby proclaim October 20th, 2022, as Research Center for the Americas Day in the city of Santa Cruz. So we've all heard and we all know what an amazing woman and inspiration Dolores Huerta is, and I could only think of something more fitting than a key to the city. I'm so honored that you are here in Santa Cruz, that you are joining us, and it's my great honor to always let you know you always have a place here in Santa Cruz with us.
Thank you, Mayor Brunner. Your longtime friend and former California State Senate Majority Leader Bill Monning sends his regrets as he's not able to join us this evening, but he asked us to share a letter with you. It reads in part, and I quote, Dolores Huerta's dedication to giving voice to the voiceless and empowering generations of leaders has inspired people throughout the Americas. While borders and immigration policies continue to divide people and often separate families, Dolores Huerta has stood, marched, and sacrificed for working families throughout the Americas. I want to congratulate and applaud and thank Dolores for her decades of steadfast organizing and leadership." End quote. And now, State Senator John Laird, I'd like to welcome him to the podium.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have recognition here on behalf of Senator Ana Caballero, Assemblymember Robert Rivas, and Assemblymember Mark Stone. And Assemblymember Robert Rivas was here earlier, and I know toured with Dolores earlier today, a housing project, and wished he could be there for this part, because this recognition talks about two amazing trajectories. And if I hadn't graduated from UCSC in such a disorganized class, we would have had our 50th reunion in June. And when I was a student here, we struggled with the issues of diversity. Diversity was still a far-off dream in many ways at UCSC. Some of us went down and picketed the Safeway for the lettuce boycott while we were students. And and you fast forward, and the farm bureaus of the Central Valley boycotted Santa Cruz in the 1980s for the stands taken by the Santa Cruz City Council for farm workers, and Cesar Chavez came to the quarry to speak out about that and make endorsements in local races. But it wasn't until the center was established in 1992 that there was a formal elevation of the discussion of diversity in ways that really fit within the university. And so the fact that this is the 30th anniversary is very significant. It really is a milestone for advances that were made and struggles that still have to be made. But then you mesh with Dolores being honored. And that hopefully is the regeneration for the next 30 years. But if you look at Dolores, I said to Robert earlier tonight when he was here, I said, was there ever a time that you voted against something Dolores wanted? And he said, oh no. And I think I am in that category as well. And that's the significant thing. She is not resting on any laurels. In the last 2 or 3 years, she advocated for the 1.6 million Californians that don't have safe and clean drinking water. She was very upset about the fact that there are no heat standards in climate change for farm workers that are working in unbearable heat in the fields. There was a recent bill authored by Mark Stone that would have extended additional organizing rights to the farm workers, and she was in that all the way, that fight. And it is just down to, you name it, she is there. And now in climate, she is the person speaking up about the impacts of climate on disadvantaged communities and making sure that it is not just people that have it good that are understanding about climate, that people in disadvantaged communities that understand the brunt of dirty air or hot weather or dirty water are the ones that we should be fighting for as we fight for the change in the climate. And I was so happy to hear finally somebody remind everybody that she was on the UC Board of Regents, because I did not see it in the announcements, and it is in the resolutions, and that was a milestone in the almost 20 years when that happened, that she did that, and that she was there, and she was representing these point of views. So the thing about it is this sets the marker for the next 30 years. Nobody's going to rest on their laurels. You have to live with what she has as a living view of the inequities in our society and how we deal with them. So on behalf of those 4 legislators, I get to officially recognize Dolores Huerta. And let me tell you, there was probably a time in the state legislature where if this were put to a vote, it wouldn't have passed. We are way past that time. So on behalf of Anna, Mark, Robert, and myself, let me recognize Dolores for an incredible record of achievement. But we are not leaving out the Research Center. So we also want to recognize the incredible 30-year record and issue the challenge to live up to the new name you have in the next 30 years and recognize the Research Center.
Thank you, Senator Laird. Those who know Dolores well know that she loves to dance. She's often the last one at the parties. And apparently, she really loves ice cream, specifically Ben & Jerry's deep, dark chocolate flavor. To enjoy that deep, dark chocolate ice cream or any other flavors that you care to try.
And now our colleague, who is also a friend of yours and activist comrade, distinguished UCSC professor Angela Davis, asked us to share this message with you.
I am so thoroughly excited about the fact that all of us who are affiliated with UC Santa Cruz can now claim that the Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas is on our campus. Dolores, I am so sorry that I'm unable to be physically present at this ceremony this evening. We have known each other for something like 50 years, and I followed your leadership for even longer. As one of the 17 million people who answered your call and stopped eating grapes, I can say that to this very day, the taste of grapes brings forth memories of the victorious boycott you led. When I agreed to briefly extend congratulations to my dear friend and comrade, Dolores Huerta, and of course her family and foundation, I enthusiastically agreed. But after I thought about it for a while, I realized that it is UCSC that has been honored by you, your family, and your foundation. And so I congratulate you for your phenomenal life's work. Your labor activism, your work against racism and misogyny and the pollution on the planet, and for your social justice leadership more broadly, which continues to unfold today. Si se puede. And now I am infinitely more proud of my affiliation with the university because of the Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas.
Truly, this is a tremendous honor for our campus. Thank you, Professor Davis. Congratulations, Doña Dolores, to you, your family, on this recognition. Permanently enshrining your name on our campus ensures that UC Santa Cruz faculty, students, staff, and the wider community will be inspired by your accomplishments, your impact, and your legacy for years to come. Thank you. Is she gonna commit?
Thank you. This is a little overwhelming. I do want to thank everyone, the chancellor, the head of the department, all of you that have made this possible. I want to thank all of you that are here tonight to share this evening with us. So thank you for giving us the precious resource that you have, which is your time. I want to thank Senator Laird. Oh my God. I have to tell you that this gentleman here has been a progressive person ever since I've known him, and he is definitely, I might say, probably the #1 person in the legislature that cares about the environment, okay? So let's give him a big applause. And of course, my really good friend, Rob Rivas, and his staff that was here earlier, Dominic, thank you very much. And thank Rob for me. I did get to see him, and you know, he is the assemblyman now for this district, and soon to be the Speaker of the House of the Assembly, okay? Speaker of the Assembly in the state of California. And when I'm thinking I'm getting this honor of the naming of the research center after me, I was thinking, maybe it should have been named after Luis Valdez, okay? Because Luis Valdez has always been out there in the forefront reminding us of who we are and where we came from and what the contribution of the indigenous people were to our society, to our country. So thank you, Luis, and thank you, his wife also, thank you so much. And what can I say about Peter Bratt, okay? Peter Bratt has made me famous. So when one day I received a call from Carlos Santana, and you know, over the years, many have been approached by many people in Hollywood saying that they wanted to do my story, okay? And we always resisted. We said no, that we didn't want that to happen. And then I get a call from Carlos, and he said, well, I want to have a documentary done about your life, and Peter Bratt is going to do it. So how do you say no to Carlos Santana? That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. And I know that this university has always been a very progressive university, University of Santa Cruz, with people like Angela Davis, of course. And by the way, one of our board members of our foundation is also a graduate of this university, Jamila Cantor Guerrero, okay? Or Guerrero Cantor, anyway, she's one of our board members from the very beginning of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. And the work that you're going to be doing here is so, so important, because what the people of Latin America have contributed to society is not known. When we think of, and by the way, I just started reading, which I should have read it many years ago, the book by Eduardo Galeano, The Open Veins of Latin America. And I would recommend that book to everyone, because when you read that book, and in such detail, how he writes about how what happened when the conquistadores, when Latin America was conquered by the Europeans. And you think of how the wealth of Europe never would have happened had they not taken the wealth from Latin America to make the Europeans wealthy. And not only the gold and the silver and the jewels and everything else, but when we think of even the foods that came from Latin America, that again, everybody takes for granted today. I mean, really, potatoes in Ireland that came from Peru? And a lot of people don't know that history. So it's not just about the economics and the agriculture, but also you think of the culture that came from our indigenous roots. And of course, when they brought the African slaves to Latin America, a whole new culture evolved from that. And the music that we all enjoy now, the rhythms and the salsa and everything else that came from that combination of these ethnic groups that merged. And so we have so much that needs to be taught. And every time, as we know, right, in today's world, where people are complaining about people, our immigrants at the border, right, that are trying to come here to their own land to seek refuge. And we have to remind people of that. And I like to say to people, Google map of the United States before 1848. And what will you find? That a third of the United States was Mexico. And so when they tell us to go back where we came from, we have to say, no, we were here first, okay? Yeah, we were here before the United States was the United States. And NBC did my ancestry recently. And my ancestry of my family, we went back 14 generations in the state of New Mexico. And my 14th great-grandmother was named Inez, and she was a Pueblo Indian, my 14th great-grandmother. And then myself and my daughter Lori here, we did our DNA, and guess what? Our ancestry goes back to Peru. Hey, Peter, how about that? Brother. Yes, from Peru through Central America to Mexico. And this is so beautiful to know that we have that ancestry. But all of this knowledge has to be taught, because this is one of the ways that we can start, ending the racism that exists, especially against Native peoples. And I'm just going to throw this in here, too. Oftentimes when we think of the people that are at our borders and they're trying to get asylum here, escaping poverty, escaping violence, which a lot of that violence is perpetuated by the United States of America to begin with, right? And, we had the wars in Central America. We never went back to clean up the mess. We just left it there. And I like to use the word bananas. And people say, why do you use that word bananas? I just think of all of the jillions of bananas that we eat every day in the United States. But the money that we pay for those bananas, it does not go to the people of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. It goes to United Fruit Company, Dole banana, Chiquita banana. It does not go to the people on whose land the bananas are produced, or the coffee, or all the things that we buy from those areas. So hopefully the center will be able to get some of those truths out to people, and it will not just for knowledge or to study, but also to change policies, okay? Because at the end of the day, this is what we need to do. We need to change the policies. We in the United States have a great debt to Latin America that still needs to be paid. Still needs to be paid. And I like to quote Caesar. Caesar would say to students when he was recruiting them to come and join the movement, he would say this: when you're in school, you study history, you learn about history, and you talk about history. When you join the movement and the research center here at UC Santa Cruz, you are going to make history. Make history, okay? So this will definitely be a living, breathing, and definitely with the students that are coming to the center there, I know that papers that will be published here, that yes, we will be able to change history and make the world a better place. So again, I want to thank you very much. But, you know, I'm an organizer, right? So I just have to remind people, it's election time, okay? We want to make sure that everybody gets out there and they vote, okay? And so to end, I'm going to ask you all to do something, okay? But before that, I want to introduce another relative of mine here, my niece, Maria Elizabeth, and her husband. Would you stand up, Maria? And her husband, you can stand up too. And Mayor, she lives in Santa Cruz. Okay, so anyway, just to remember who we are and what we're about, that we all here need to make history. So I'm gonna ask everybody to stand up for a second. And I'm gonna ask you 2 questions. And I know you know the answers, but we're going to shout the answers really loud so that the haters can hear us. All those haters out there, okay? Okay, so the first question I'm going to ask, don't answer until I tell you, okay? The first question I'm going to ask you, who's got the power? I want you to say, we've got the power. Then I want to say, what kind of power? I want you to say, people power, okay? So we know, all of us working together, that we can definitely make the changes that we need to make in our society, all right? Let's go. Who's got the power? We got power. What kind of power? People power. Are we going to use our people power to make the changes that we need to elect good people to office? What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede? Sí se puede. ¿Se puede o no se puede? Sí se puede. ¿Se puede o no se puede? Sí se puede. Let's go together. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am so honored. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You can go sit down, or you want to, whichever. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I can help you walk over there.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, directo, acá. Okay, por acá.
Thank you.
Indeed, sí se puede. Thank you, Doña Dolores. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Catherine Ramirez, Professor and Chair of the Latin American and Latino Studies Department here at UC Santa Cruz, who will introduce our keynote speaker this evening, Cristina Jiménez Moreta.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. We are so fortunate to be hearing from not one, but 2 outstanding Latina leaders and activists this evening. Our keynote speaker, Cristina Jiménez Moreta, is a community organizer, political strategist, and storyteller. She is the co-founder and former executive director of United We Dream, the largest immigrant youth-led organization in the United States. At the age of 13, Cristina came to this country with her family from Ecuador. She grew up undocumented. In 2007, she graduated from Queens College of the City University of New York, and in 2011, she earned her master's in public administration from Baruch College. Under her leadership, United We Dream has grown into a powerful network of 1 million members. It's helped shift the narrative about immigrants and immigration and influenced policy. Cristina was instrumental in the organization's campaign for deferred action for childhood arrivals. Also known as DACA, this executive order has enabled hundreds of thousands of young immigrants to live without fear of deportation, to work, to obtain driver's licenses, to open bank accounts, and to pursue higher education at institutions like UC Santa Cruz. In recognition of her work as an organizer, Cristina received a MacArthur Fellowship in 2017, and this is the grant that's also known as the Genius Grant. It's given to a very small group of people who've shown extraordinary originality and dedication in their creative pursuits and a marked capacity for self-direction. She also has a spot on the Time 100 list, and she has appeared and published in numerous media outlets like the New York Times, NPR, Univision, and La Opinión. Her keynote address this evening is titled, "We Are Powerful Beyond Numbers." After Cristina's talk, my colleague, Professor Patricia Pino, of the Latin American and Latino Studies Department, will moderate the Q&A. If you have a question, please raise your hand at the end of Cristina's presentation, and you'll be given an index card and a pencil with which to write your question. Professor Pino will collect the cards and ask questions on behalf of members of the audience. Cristina builds on Dolores Huerta's legacy by working for a world in which all people can live with dignity and security and thrive. Please join me in welcoming to UC Santa Cruz, Cristina Jiménez Moreta. Cristina Jiménez Moreta is the first keynote speaker of the newly renamed Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas.
What a true honor to be with you tonight. How are we all doing? I know it's a little bit chilly, but I am so warm. Just filled with the power in this room and with the inspiration from Dolores. Congratulations again to you, Dolores. Thank you for your work, your leadership. And thank you for paving the way for young people like me, a young, undocumented, brown woman, to find my voice, discover the power of collective action, join others in the fight for immigrant justice, and for modeling for us what does organizing look like. Thank you for inspiring me to believe that sí se puede. ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? To Director Silvana Falcón and the staff and the leadership of the newly named Dolores Huerta Research Center. Like, ooh, I get the goosebumps when I say that. Thank you for inviting me to join in this wonderful space and this community and to celebrate with you 30 years of groundbreaking work. Thank you for creating a space where we can learn about ourselves, about our roots, and most importantly, to learn to love ourselves. It is truly an honor to be here and celebrate with you. In the spirit of speaking truths, That was the theme that is bringing us together. I'd like to start by talking about some difficult truths that make us feel a little bit uncomfortable. But feeling uncomfortable is good, because out of the discomfort come moments of change and transformation. A few weeks ago, news broke about a recording of a conversation among 3 Latinx LA City Council members where they expressed and perpetuated racist, anti-Black, and anti-Indigenous views. Their remarks revealed and exposed their own internalized racism and white supremacy, and the fact that anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism in the Latinx community is well and alive. Now, this is a difficult truth, but one that we must confront together. Only by confronting it, exposing it, and doing the work to eradicate it from our communities will we truly love ourselves, our community, and build the pride and the political power that we need for our communities to thrive. We have the choice to do this work. It is completely up to us. I made the choice to dedicate myself to this work. What choice would you make? I want you to think about this question. What choice would you make? I chose this work because it's deeply personal for me. As a child, I believed the lie that white people were better than me. See, part of the legacy of colonialism is the idea that white people and the European folks that came to colonize the region are better than us. This idea is embedded in Latin American culture and is legitimized by its institutions and its laws and its systems. In Ecuador, where I was born, Indigenous people make up about 30% of the population. Afro-Ecuadorians make up about 7% of the population. And even though I didn't have intellectual consciousness to understand these systems, I understood that the social structure favored white people, light skin, and treated Indigenous and Black people as inferior. Early on, I learned that white skin and European features like blonde hair and blue eyes were considered by many to be better, considered more attractive and beautiful. Everything in the dominant culture around me, what I saw on TV, the images I saw at the church, things I heard from my teachers, everything told me that my darker skin, my Black straight hair, my brown eyes were undesirable. How I look and who I was became a source of shame. Growing up, I heard family members, and raise your hand if you feel comfortable, maybe you heard this in your own families. If you marry a white person or a gringo, you will be better in the race. As if there was something flawed with us that needed improvement. I don't think my family really understood that what they were teaching us was to hate ourselves. They were really passing on what they had learned from their parents and their parents' parents. Because see, that's how colonialism works. It turns lies into dominant ways of thinking, and that lies become accepted and internalized as the truth. And those lies become part of family culture, and they also become institutionalized. So let me share with you an example. In school, I went to school in Ecuador for my elementary school. I was taught that Christopher Columbus was a hero, deserving of celebration and praise for discovering the Americas and opening the ways for the Spanish to colonize the region. However, the truth that the Spanish came, as Dolores was reminding us, to steal wealth and land, to rape Indigenous women, to commit genocide, was not the focus of our history lessons at school. The underlying message was that we were better off as a colonized people. That the Spanish had somehow, quote unquote, saved the savage indigenous people and bettered the race. And that we ought to be thankful to the white people that came to colonize us. So I, like many other children in Ecuador that were in school, we believed the lie. I believed the lie. And many immigrants, like my own family, bring this internalized lie with us when we migrate. I was 13 years old when I came to this country with my family. And coming to this country only intensified my feeling of inferiority. Not only I believed that white people were better than me, I also believed that this country, I had heard the good PR about this country. Americans know how to sell things. That this was the best country and the best democracy in the entire world. So as a young undocumented immigrant person, I felt afraid, ashamed about my immigration status, but also inferior for how I looked in the country that I came from. I was undocumented, I was very afraid, and I had a lot of shame with me. As non-white immigrants who didn't speak English and did not have the papers to live in this country, my family and I felt like unwanted guests in a country that was not our own. Every day fearing that this country could just kick us out without any reason and at any moment. And so to avoid getting kicked out, I felt the pressure to show that I was one of the quote-unquote good immigrants. I had to show that I was worthy of being allowed to stay here. My family and I internalized the belief that we had to be exemplary immigrants to be accepted and to be allowed to stay. It truly became a survival mechanism. For many immigrants in this country, survival means assimilation, shedding our culture, our language, our identity, and get as close as possible to whiteness. And in this race to whiteness, many immigrants of color end up believing the lie that there are quote-unquote good immigrants and quote-unquote bad immigrants. And the idea that white people are superior is so pervasive that even immigrants and even those who are undocumented end up believing the racist idea that immigrants and people of color are bad. As a young undocumented person, I strive to do all I can do to convince this country that I was worthy. Like, check me out, I'm worthy to stay here. I learned English, I got good grades, I did my community service. I performed beyond and above in school. My parents worked really hard, even though they were exploited every day at work. But over time, I realized the truth. And the truth was that no matter how much of a good immigrant I was, or how hard I worked, or how close to whiteness I was, none of that will protect me from systematic racism and the impact of white supremacy. In high school, I worked really hard to become a strong college candidate. I did everything my teachers told me to do. You know what I mean, like the AP courses, done. Community service, done. Become an honor student, done. Join student government, Key Club, all the other student clubs, like the yearbook. I didn't know anything about the yearbook, but I was like, I'm gonna join that club. And when it came to time of starting the college application process in my 11th grade, I was both nervous and excited about this next stage of my life. And I went out to talk to my college advisor. In an overcrowded high school of over 700 students, I waited 40 minutes in line to meet one of the only 2 college advisors that we had. She asked me if I had a social security number.
I nervously said no. Then she asked me about my parents and if they had Social Security numbers. And I said that they didn't have them either. So she just sat there and looked at me, and I knew that by now she knew I was undocumented. She told me that because of my status, I couldn't go to college. And as the shock hit me, she just looked over my head and shouted, "Next," to usher in the next student waiting in line. She did not offer any help for what I could do next. I saw the hopes and the dreams of my parents and all of our hard work, just everything, falling apart. In the blink of an eye, my future, right there and there, was over. I went home and told my mom what had happened. And I have expected her to actually have a crying session with me about it. But instead, she looked at me and said, "No, there is no way that we're going to take no for an answer. You are going to college, and you're going to have to go back and find somebody else that can help you figure that out." Yes, applause for my mom. By the way, my mom is watching through the live stream in New York. Este aplauso es para ti, mamá. So then I was facing the worst fear a teenager can face. Because what she told me was that if I did not go, she will go to school and figure that out herself. That resonates with many of us in the room, right? So I was now faced with this greater fear of being embarrassed by my mom at my school. So I had a choice to make. Choice A, go back to school and find another teacher that can help me figure this out. Or B, get completely embarrassed by my mother. So ultimately, the teenage fear of my mom making a scene at school won out. And I went back to school and confided in one of my ESL teachers who was able to help me out, figure out how to sign up for the City University of New York. Had I accepted the counselor's word, I quite literally would not be standing before you today. I did not know it then, but what I was doing was challenging someone with institutional power. And I was holding the school accountable to its mission and to serve its community. My guidance counselor was wrong. But as far as I knew, she had all the power and she had all the information. She held the keys to open or close the doors to students like me. But what I learned about that experience is that all of us have that power to hold institutions accountable, to open and close doors. And just like this center was born to create a door, and it's now renaming it to honor one of the leaders in our community, and we'll continue to create a safe space for our community. And this is in the kind of institutions that we ought to invest and support. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. You may all remember that we entered into a war against terrorism, which what it really meant for the US too was that it was a war against Muslims and immigrants. Targeting Muslim communities and immigrant communities became one of the strategies to fight terrorism. So in our immigrant neighborhood of Jackson Heights, Queens, for anyone that is familiar with New York, Jackson Heights is a vibrant community of Muslim and Latin American immigrants. We're all neighbors, and we all learned to live together. But after 9/11, local police worked with ICE, and together they started targeting Muslim people in our neighborhood. Bed by bed, we were hearing the stories of Muslim siblings and neighbors that were missing. They started with our Muslim siblings, but they came for the rest of us. The presence of police in our neighborhood also intensified. I was home one day and my brother got home crying and all shaking up. He was only 12 years old. As he walked from school to our house, he was stopped and physically assaulted by a police officer for no other reason other than being a young brown man and therefore suspicious. And me, as the big sister, who got really pissed about what had happened to my brother, I gained the courage to show up at the local police station so that I could complain about what happened to my brother. But the sergeant at the station laughed at me. See, the system is designed so that we think that we don't have any power, and when we speak up, they want to shut us down. But what I learned in the immigrant justice movement is that we have the power to also push back. And when our communities was being targeted by deportation, I joined the fight to stop the deportation of my immigrant community. Every day, I was learning about new cases of young people and their family members that were facing deportation. Some of them had already lost their loved ones, their parents, their friends. Some were facing deportations themselves, like Amal Esaheb and Walter Barrientos, who was a friend at a time and became later on my life partner. Kamal was born in Morocco, and he grew up undocumented in New York. Post 9/11, the Bush administration instituted the Special Registration Program. Anyone has heard of the Special Registration Program here? It's pretty obscure, so I'm glad to see that people have learned about it. The Special Registration Program targeted Muslim men and boys, requiring them to register with the government, again, as a strategy to fight against terrorism. The people who were already in the country had to come forward and to register with immigration authorities, and those that would arrive to the country from Muslim countries had to register upon their arrival. Kamal trusted our government, and he came forward, and he registered. And as a result, he was put in deportation proceedings. But immigrant communities came together to fight for Kamal's right to stay. I remember joining young people, family members, advocates, and lawyers and community organizations that made phone calls and wrote letters and held rallies. One of my first rallies that I joined as a young activist was outside of Federal Plaza, which is the immigration building in downtown Manhattan. And I was holding my sign that said, "We are Kamal." We were chanting, "Undocumented, unafraid, undocumented, unafraid." And all of that work led to Kamal winning his case and being able to stay. Experiencing the power of community organizing, of people coming together to stop deportations, I made the lifelong commitment to build power to liberate our communities. And in doing this work, I realized that the experiences of racial profiling, police violence, and deportation were not isolated incidents. This was systematic. The systems, laws, and institutions that were oppressing immigrants and people of color have been designed to do exactly that. The same laws and systems that deploy ICE and border agents to separate families at the border and violently expel Haitian refugees are the same systems that lock up Black and brown people and the same systems that attack women's rights. See, the systems are connected. And we ought to understand that what impacts one member of a community really harms all of us. The young people that came together to fight deportations in the early 2000s with me created United We Dream with the vision of creating a safe space for young people to build community, to share stories, and to dream about how to create a country and a world where people of color and immigrants, regardless of immigration status, can live without fear and thrive. And as I learn about the experiences of other undocumented people, of young women, of queer folks and their families, I myself gained the courage to come out as undocumented and unafraid and shed the fear and shame. That fear and that shame transform into pride and empowerment, and most importantly, it transformed into self-love. It was in this community of poor and working class young people of color without immigration status that I learned to love myself, to love how I look, and to love where I came from. It was in this community that I learned about the farm worker movement. Check it out. I did not learn about this in school, in high school in New York, so just saying. I learned it in the movement. I learned about the Black Liberation Movement. I learned about the Chicanx movement. At United We Dream, we learn about social movements and its leaders, but we also learn by doing. And we knew, learning from other social movements, that those closest to the pain are the closest to the solutions that we need. So by organizing those impacted in our communities and pressuring those in power, we committed ourselves to doing the work so that every single person in our community could live without fear of deportation. Together, we have built a powerful network of over 1 million people now. We have fought hundreds of deportations and won, by the way. We have passed state laws that have allowed undocumented students to go to college. We have stopped additional funding for the deportation forces that are harming our communities. And we pushed President Obama to enact the DACA program. See, DACA is a testament to the power of working class people coming together, building community, sharing stories, speaking truth to power, and taking action to demand change. We won DACA because we did not take no for an answer. You know, the White House told us that they couldn't stop deportations, but we pushed back. We won DACA because we challenged the status quo upheld by both political parties and advocates who thought that the young people were being unrealistic and too idealistic about the demands that we were making. So instead, we led rallies, walks, sittings in Congress, undocumented speakouts, and we won DACA because we did not give up. So as we face challenging times, we're not only facing a decisive election this year, but we're also facing increased climate crises, the rise of white nationalism and fascism, growing mass detention and incarceration. It can feel pretty heavy. But I'm here to remind you that we have the power to create the country where all of us can live with dignity and thrive. Do you believe that we have that power? Sí se puede. Numbers alone will not do it. See, I hear a lot of talk about communities of color growing in numbers and Latinx communities growing in states like California and Arizona and other places in the Southwest and the South. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But numbers are not destiny. And numbers will not translate necessarily into political power. It is up to us to seize the opportunity that we have in front of us to organize people and build the power that we need to create change. It is up to us to let go of the lie of white supremacy and to choose loving ourselves and our community. It is up to us to build cultural pride in our communities. It is up to us to hold elected officials accountable with our votes. It is up to us to build the support that institutions like this center needs to reground us in truth and to empower our community. It is up to us to come together to organize our communities and to build a political power that could actually build a truly inclusive, multiracial democracy for once and for all. The choice to become active in our communities, to reject white supremacy, to speak up, and to take action, it is up to us. What choice would you make? What choice would you inspire your family and your community to make? The news is that it's up to you. It is up to all of us. Thank you.
Well, you can stay here. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cristina. This has been so inspiring. Thank you. As a Latin American myself, I can absolutely relate to absolutely everything you said, especially when it comes to white supremacy and to whiteness. So that's actually one of the questions I want to ask you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Patricia Pino, professor in the Department of Latin American and Latino Studies here at UCSC. Unfortunately, we won't have time for the Q&A that I was going to be moderating because we have a lot of celebration to do, a lot of eating and dancing ahead of us tonight. But I have been given the pleasure to ask you a few questions. So the first question I'd like to ask you is exactly about whiteness. So as a Latin American person, I too grew up looking up to whiteness. And we try so hard, right, to become what we are not. We try so hard to change our appearance, to change our skin tone, to change our hair, but also whiteness operates as values, right? Those values that we aspire to. So, and you described so well how this aspirational whiteness is detrimental to communities in Latin America, but also Latin American communities, Latinos, Latinas in the United States. So my question is, how do we dismantle that? And I am sure that that's part of the work you do in your amazing organization, United We Dream. So if you could share with us some of the strategies that you do that, especially I'm thinking, how do you do that with children and teenagers, right? How do you dismantle white supremacy and aspirational whiteness in general? But then the other part of the question is also how do we dismantle that in the minds of white people as well, so that we are not just once again carrying that load alone.
I mean, this is such a present topic because of our surroundings and the current political moment. I mean, I will say that, you know, there are some clear steps for us to be able to fight this in our communities and to transform it. And at United We Dream, for example, we made sure that we integrated anti-Black and anti-Indigenous conversations. One, to acknowledge it, to acknowledge that it exists, and to make sure that we were training on pro-racist, pro-Blackness, and pro-Indigenous communities curriculum. So a lot of it is with education. A lot of it is having those conversations even when they're uncomfortable with our family members. And a lot of it became a ritual about really celebrating our culture, our people, and celebrating ourselves. Number two, we have to follow the leadership of Indigenous folks. And we have to follow the leadership of Black leaders as well. And it was so wonderful to hear Dr. Davis join us via video and her work and her example about what we need to be doing. And third, when it comes to children, you know, I just became a mom early this year. And our little, it's 6 months old. This week, actually. And I think about this question a lot because I think about the world and the country that I want him to live in. And for us, what has been important is to have these conversations at home in a way that is multi-generational. Because for young people in the room, you may face this a lot. The older generations may not be where we are when it comes to race consciousness and our education around racism and our values around and against racism. So that has been hard work that we're doing at home. But it's also about the kind of education and exposure that we're doing from early on, from what kind of books we're reading to what kind of actions our baby's joining. So he's already been to multiple actions and rallies from the womb and also in his first few months. Because it is important to bring that fight against racism and embody it through our actions as well. And what better example than Itzae to look at his parents and his family doing that work and learning from that example. Kids absorb everything, right? Like I'm learning a lot about parenthood and babies these days, reading all the books. And they're absorbing everything. So we need to lead by example for them.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. So another question that I have, which I think is also shared here by many of us, is that your work, the work you do in the United We Dream, mirrors from an activist grassroots perspective what the now Dolores Huerta Research Center for the Americas does from an activist academic perspective. That is to support and promote hemispheric cross-border efforts that contribute to an understanding of our interconnected lives and futures. But to understand this interconnectedness, we recognize that the presence of Latinos and Latinas in the United States must be seen in tandem with the presence of the United States in Latin America, which, as we know, has been a colonial and imperial presence. So how do you discuss this in the organization? How is that consciousness also of, as you were mentioning before, people trying to be seen as the upstanding immigrant and trying to fit in, etc. So how do you navigate, telling that history, telling this truth of the imperial presence of the United States and Latin America for people who are in a vulnerable situation here in the United States?
I think that this is an important question because I believe in the power of storytelling. What we're doing tonight here is so sacred because we're sharing stories. And through story, we're building community and we're building relationships. And I don't know many of you, but, I share very deep truths about my own story with all of you today, and therefore, we're connected. And part of the work that we do at United We Dream and in movement building is that the power of stories bring us together. And it's through the power of those stories that we're able to identify those systems of connection. Unfortunately, not many young people get to study about this in college. In fact, many of our members, because of the laws that we have in place, are barred from accessing higher education. So in our spaces, it has become critical for us to use storytelling, which is really a tradition that comes from many of our ancestors, to learn through the stories. And I was sharing through my own personal story, I learned about the connections of these systems through hearing other people's stories. To understand that when NAFTA happened, all of a sudden, lots of people lost jobs in Mexico and lost their land in Mexico, forcing migration. And I learned that not because I was reading that in the textbooks, but I learned that because of the stories I was hearing from immigrant families all across the country. So storytelling, it's a powerful tool that we have at our disposal to do that. And the second thing is that it should not just stay at the level of story, because we ought to speak truth to power and speaking out about them, exposing the fact, as Dolores was reminding us today, of the role of the U.S. in causing and forcing people out of their homes. When we think about what the U.S. has done to Haiti, to Mexico, to Central America, to other countries in the region, and what has forced that migration here. So I truly believe that it's not just storytelling, but it's taking action and having centers like this research center and other institutions in our communities that are really fomenting this understanding, but also making the connections that would allow us to not just build movements here, but also transnational movements. United We Dream has been connected now to also refugee young people all across the world. and immigrants who are undocumented in other parts of the world as well, creating a sense of global connection and potentially a global movement as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much, Cristina. Thank you. And everybody, I'm so sorry that we run out of time for Q&A, but the party continues, of course, and Cristina is around, so you can ask your questions directly to her. But before we continue the celebration, we will be having the performance by Los Mexicas. So please stick around, and thank you so much for being here.
se columpiaba, ya se le acabaron los gustos a la joven que yo amaba. Bienvenido, pavido, navido, ¿dónde está tu esposa Navida? Componiéndose el vestido, arreglándose el peinavido, las hijas del pavido, navido ya